I will be talking on the radical treatment of liver hydration. As we have already discussed that is only accidental but a dead-end host. Liver being the first filter is the most common site of involvement, and then followed by endocyst, which has got a acellular dead laminar membrane and a germinal membrane. So, what is the anatomical basis of determining a management strategy? If a cyst has got laminated membrane, the contents will be sterile, it will be univesicular or a clear cyst. So this kind of cyst is suitable for a radiological treatment, as has been discussed in CE1 and CE2 type of cyst. But the cysts where both laminated and germinal membrane are there, they are usually fertile, they are multivesicular, and the cyst like the one shown in the lower panel, it is more suitable for surgical management. So if we see, the management of hydrated cyst basically entails in preventing recurrence and preventing complication. If we see anatomical basis of anatomy of the cyst and how does it recur, the germinal membrane invaginates and forms a brood capsule, and this has got many protoscolices. If it invaginates towards the cavity side, cyst side, it is called endogenous vesiculation, and it will form daughter cyst and infected fluid, which if spilled inside the abdominal cavity will cause recurrence. However, if it extends towards the liver side, it forms towards the pericyst, it is called exogenous vesiculation, and these exogenous vesiculations are likely to get missed out while doing conservative surgery for cyst, so these can again form the cause of recurrence. Treatment strategies, medical management, these have already been discussed. The only very select group of patients are suitable for that. Radiological management, as sir has already discussed in detail, pair or drainage system for radiological management, or complex surgical treatment is reserved only for complexes. So aim of surgery in management of hydrated is total extirpation of the cyst, which includes surgical removal with or without the use of scolicidal agents. That will depend upon the operative strategy we have planned. And second aim is to prevent recurrence. And this too has to be achieved at a very low mortality and morbidity rates. So what are the surgical options? One is conservative method and radical surgery. Conservative method entails partial removal of cyst and evacuation of contents, and then draining the residual cavity. Unroofing and evacuation, this can be achieved by partial removal or just simple, we can unroof the cyst and drain out the contents, and then put a drain and tackle the biliary complication, tackle the cavity. These details I am not going to discuss. So radical method entails complete cyst removal. This can be done by two techniques. One is open technique or a closed technique, or if the cyst is replacing the entire lobe, one can go in for a radical hepatectomy. So what are the problems associated with conservative management? Once we are opening the cyst, there is always a potential of spillage of the contents into the peritoneal cavity and contamination of the peritoneal cavity. Since I have already told that this fluid is quite infected, and if it spills, it can really be a potential site for future recurrence. Second, the use of scolicidal agents. Most of the surgeons, they are using povidone iodine as a scolicidal agents. So what happens when we inject povidone iodine in the cyst? This is going to stain all the contents of the cyst. If it is clear fluid, it is going to get stained with the color of the beta povidone iodine. So subsequently, cyst biliary communications will be difficult to identify. So then this is once any cyst biliary communication is missed, this will further lead on to formation of a biliary fistula, which needs another interventional procedure to tackle it. Secondly, once we partially remove the cyst, there is going to be a residual cavity. So there are n number of ways have been described in literature, starting from marsupialization, introversion, capitonage. Many ways have been described to tackle the residual cavity. So what are the advantages of radical surgery? It involves total removal of cysts, including the exocysts, exogenous vesiculation. So this potentially can reduce recurrence. So once we do excise the cyst in toto without causing any spillage, drug therapy subsequently will become unnecessary. So if we are using closed technique of cyst removal, the use of protoscholicidal agents into the cavity will become unnecessary, because and biliary communication can be tackled very easily, and once we completely remove the cyst, it doesn't lead to any residual cavity, so you don't have any problem of residual cavity and how to tackle with it. Why postoperative biliary fistula is common after conservative surgery? Because the basic technique of conservative surgery is to open the cavity and try to locate the communication. Once we have opened the cavity, the pressure in the cyst decreases, the communication may collapse, which is difficult to identify intraoperatively, and subsequently once we have come out, it can manifest as a biliary fistula. Secondly, the use of povidone iodine as a scolicidal agent can stain the cavity, which can make subsequent identification difficult. And at times we see the cysts are partially calcified. So if a communication is lying at the site of calcification of the cyst, it will be difficult to suture, it will be difficult to close that communication even intraoperatively, even if it is identified. So radical surgery, however, tackles the disease from outside. We just dissect in the plane of in a plane between the pericyst and the normal liver parenchyma. So any biliary communication which is going inside the cyst will be tackled very easily. So communication will be easily identified and ligated because we are dissecting into the normal liver tissue. The problem of calcification and subsequent suturing will not be there. However, there are many problems associated with radical surgeries, because if you see the geographical distribution, this is mainly a disease which is found in the rural areas of most of the countries. So it has to be tackled at a rural hospital in many a times where technical expertise of liver resection or pericystectomy will not be available. So this is a very big challenge to the person who is working in the rural area. Secondly, it needs special equipments, as Professor Sitaram has told, like USA water jet dissector. You need to have this before you embark upon major liver resection or even pericystectomy. And at times we don't find cysts suitable, particularly the cysts which are in close proximity with the biliovascular channels. They are not suitable for this. So you have to select your patient properly before you try to embark in radical surgery. So just to word about the suitability of cyst for radical surgery, the cysts were classified into two types: superficial cyst and vesiculobiliary cyst. Superficial cysts are the ones which are extrinsic in the hepatic parenchyma and they are distant from the main hepatic vessels and vena cava. However, the vesiculobiliary cysts are located deep in the parenchyma. It usually needs a lot of transaction of the parenchyma before we can directly access these cysts, and they are usually close to the pedicles and stem of the main intrahepatic vessels and even vena cava. So this is an example to show that this cyst on the right side is pretty close to the bifurcation of the portal vein, will be relatively not suitable for radical surgery. However, a peripherally located cyst in the posterior segment away from the vascular channels, away from the vena cava, will be suitable for radical surgery. So how to choose a particular procedure? I have told there are three types of procedure: liver resection, open and closed pericystectomy. So for a large cyst, which is essentially replacing the entire left lobe of the liver, and we can see that there is hardly any parenchyma left in the left side of the liver. These are the cysts where one can go in and do a left hepatectomy and can get rid of the cyst. However, such a small cyst located in the periphery, in the segment cyst, again is best tackled with pericystectomy. For a cyst which is smaller in size, we can approach with a closed technique. However, if the cyst is very large and it is difficult to handle, there is a risk of rupture during manipulation. So it is much better to aspirate the cyst, decompress the cyst, and then proceed for pericystectomy. This is what is called open technique of pericystectomy. So what is the technique? Basically, we need an incision which gives adequate exposure to the liver, and this incision will depend upon the location of the cyst. Then subsequent to exposure of the liver, we need complete mobilization of the liver, that part of the hemiliver where the cyst is located, where we intend to operate. Pedicle control and isolation is not a must for pericystectomy. However, when one plans to do a hepatectomy for liver hydrated, we need to tackle the pedicle first. So we always pack the area with the scolicidal agent, so packs, so that in case of any inadvertent opening up of the cyst, it doesn't lead to a disaster. We can see here a posterior superiorly located cyst in the right lobe of the liver. Adequate mobilization is being done. We can see part of calcification and the biliary channel is being ligated here, and this is the residual liver. And you can appreciate here that the right lobe of liver is completely mobilized to tackle this cyst, and this is how it looks like. And on the gut section there is bile staining to suggest that there was a biliary complication, and that too particularly in the area of calcification of the cyst. This is anatomically left lobe is completely replaced by the cyst, but again here we can do a complete total pericystectomy. The left lobe is completely mobilized. A fissure plane is created between the liver parenchyma and the cyst, and this fissure plane is gradually deepened. And this is the vena cava middle hepatic vein, and the cyst is completely separated from the liver parenchyma, and left hepatic vein is ligated. And at the end of the procedure, we always check for biliostasis and hemostasis, and we can see here this is the raw surface of liver. There is no residual cavity. We don't have a problem of residual cavity here. And the cyst contents are bilious. Even for a cyst located relatively centrally, we can easily tackle it by closed pericystectomy. Here we have to carefully isolate the pedicle from the cyst, and once we are sure that the pedicle is away, there is a small amount of liver parenchyma between the cyst and the main portal pedicle. We can proceed with pericystectomy, and we can see here the left lobe is fairly enlarged. Since we are taking out majority of the cyst tissue, majority of the atrophic liver, so the problem of residual liver volume and liver volumetry is not really a problem in this situation. And this is again the same patient. We can see here the exogenous vesiculation, which is being tackled during the technique of pericystectomy, which otherwise would have been missed had the cyst been opened and would have led to recurrence. And again the biliary communication, we can see here, is being ligated and the contents are bilious. This is the residual cavity after cyst excision. So, is there any advantage of doing a radical surgery? What is the literature evidence? We can see these are many series. These are many series where the data has been compared, and it has been seen that the conservative surgery was associated with almost 10% of recurrence rate as opposed to 1.5% of the recurrence rate in radical surgery group. However, most of that data is retrospective. There is no large single prospective randomized trial in this because of inherent nature of this cyst, suitability of the patients. So this is a recent large retrospective study published in American Journal of Surgery, where 240 patients of radical treatment were compared with 214 patients of liver conservative treatment. And look at the type of surgery. They have gone up to doing right extended hepatectomy, right hepatectomy, sectionectomy, and closed pericystectomy, total or subtotal. And then they had comparable demographic parameters, and these are the results. What they found, that the local complications in the form of bile leak, residual cavity infection were higher in the conservative treatment than in the radical treatment, than in the radical group. The recurrence rate was 30% versus 1.2%, and this is, I tell you, this is the follow-up of 2 years. And if you follow these patients for a longer period of time, I am sure the recurrences will be higher. And however, the mortality was higher in the radical group, 9.2% compared to 6.5%. But this is not statistically significant, but this has to be taken into consideration, because we cannot have a patient of a benign disease dying of a operation. So Why there are no large randomized trials? Because there will be selection bias and there will be very limited centers who will be offering radical treatment in this situation. But I could encounter only one randomized trial published in 2008. This is a small randomized trial. They have, to begin with, they enrolled over a period of 3 years 65 patients. However, they could find only 32 patients suitable for randomization. They were very strict in choosing a patient, like a patient with a centrally located cyst was excluded from that trial and in the beginning itself. And they had only taken the patient with a peripheral cyst which is suitable for radical as well as conservative, and they randomized into two arms of radical and conservative group, and they could see that the cyst location, cyst size, number of patients with multiple cysts, they were comparable in both the groups. The operative parameters in the form of operative time, blood loss, hospital stay were also comparable in both the groups. However, they found that even though the study is very small, but there was a statistically significant difference in early recurrence and cavity related complication in the conservative group compared to the radical surgery group. So to conclude that, I would like to say that radical surgery will provide a durable and a permanent treatment to this problem, and this can be achieved at a low morbidity and low mortality, but in a selected centers only. Careful case selection is the key point. Surgical expertise and instrumentation has to be taken care of before we embark upon any radical treatment in this benign disease. And conservative surgery still has a definitive role, largely in the centers where we cannot do radical resections, and particularly in the rural area, and secondly the cysts which are difficult to manage with radical surgery. Thank you.
The principles of hydatid cyst. Actually, there are two or three new dimensions came into the hydatid surgery. For many years, it was a surgical domain where the whole treatment was that you either empty the cyst and try to do pericystectomy. That was the whole concept. But then there are two or three dimensions came in last 20 years. One was of pair, as I said, where people started small cysts with medical therapy and pair, they started showing good results. On the other hand, came the concept of radical cystectomy. That means now you try to do more and remove completely, which is associated with these risks. And the third dimension to came was a laparoscopic surgery. Because laparoscopic surgery came, people started really emptying it out without needing cystectomy. And the trouble with hydatid cyst is because you have to have a very good follow-up for any treatment success we need to really assess. Because initial success will be always there, but the recurrences rates, exact recurrences rate, if you want to really calculate, it requires a really good follow-up. Now countries where there is hydatid cyst, you always find hydatid cyst, the recurrences and follow-ups are very poorly documented. And therefore you find there is so much of paucity of the literature. And another issue which is there in the hydatid cyst is usually the cystobiliary communication. And I will just try to show. So what is the basic principle of hydatid cyst? Completelize the cyst, and that is another concept. You try to use cholecytal agents. Obliterate cavity. Now either you open and put an omentum, or you never try to take sutures, but either excise that cavity or put a omentum. That was the concept of obliteration. And the main purpose is to prevent recurrence. Now the contraindications for surgery were poor general condition, extremes of age, pregnant women, multiple difficult cysts, and dead or totally calcified cysts, where the surgery was probably not indicated. And these are again, as I said, WHO working group recommendations. Now, what can you really do in a hydatid? Cystectomy, total pericystectomy, partial resection, that means trying to remove what is visible wall, simple closure or tube drainage, capitonage, that means remove only the head, marsupialization, just cut and open it, and which technique, lap or open, this remains always a question, because depending upon the size, site and expertise, you may choose the different kind of a method which you are going to do. Now laparoscopic management is something where you do preoperative chemotherapy Usually you put 4 ports like you would do for any cholecystectomy. Normally you select cysts which are superficial, either segment 5, 6, 7 or 2, 3. Normally you trying to do laparoscopic hydrated drainage in segment 8 and 4A and higher segments are very difficult to get into, 7 also. So if you are very close to the diaphragm posteriorly, trying to do laparoscopic drainage is going to be difficult. If it's little more lower, then you'll always find laparoscopic drainage is easy. Initially you decompress. Many times you require 2 laparoscopic systems because you're putting one scope into the cyst wall and one you're putting in abdomen. You don't want to really change it because there's always chance of spillage. So preferably you should have 2 systems. Irrigation of cavity with folicidal agents and with no biliary communication. Partial pericystectomy, residual cyst elements are removed. Omentoplasty if needed and external drainage is usually done. Now, if you look at this video, you would like to put a typical Falney-Velus cannula and then you directly puncture the hydatid because it's usually thin wall. You already seen on a laparoscope that it is there. And then you can see now this is a bile communication which you can really see. So this patient had already put an ERCP and it was really drained. But then you put an external drainage and you evacuate the whole kind of an hydatid which is likely to open. And you can see those suction taking away all the hydatids of this kind of nature. So much of hydatid you can remove through laparoscopy and then it's a huge thing. But now here there is no biliary communication, but and actually that color what you are saying was an betadine color because many people use betadine. And but if you have biliary communication, what do you really do? I think last ISG in Jaipur I had given a complete talk on hydatid biliary communication. But what is the gist of that talk? That if you are able to predict a biliary communication, predict it and put an ERCP if possible and stent and that is and evacuate the bile duct. If you are on table, if you find there is a bilious kinds of scolicidal agents you use, hypertonic saline, cetrimide, ethanol, formalin, betadine and albendazole, out of which most of these like say formalin or hypertonic saline, if there is a biliary communication can give rise to biliary sclerosis. People have reported sclerosing kind of cholangitis because of formalin and therefore now you would not like to use them. Most of us have stopped using it. And therefore most of the people will today use either betadine or hypochlorite solution or diluted cetrimide. That's what mostly used. And that is the betadine probably the safest, but if you give preoperative chemotherapy, it becomes much safer, which you can really do. And as I said, people have used all kinds of these colicidal agents. What are the operative findings? Usually there is a number of cysts which you find. A single right lobe is again predominant. Mean size is about 11.6, biliary communication in 14%, as I said in the previous also, and bronchial communication can be there in 3 patients, especially chest. And mortality, as I said, is changes, but as I said, you should try to reduce it as much as possible. And anaphylactic reaction is very low today, and you can get infections and abscess correction. And postoperative complications can be varied in these patients, and computerized tomography can again is a good follow for the hydatid cyst. So I think we'll stop here because I tried to give you the complete kind of a pattern, like if you can see what is hydatid cyst, the medical management, the pair, then the conservative treatment, laparoscopic treatment, and radical cystectomy. And then what we really need to have is use a proper choice of a particular thing based on the type of patient, type of the cyst, and where it is located, and what is the expertise which is there available in your place. And that is what probably an hydatid cyst today, current management is being really done. And I think me and Vikas will take questions if you have. Okay. Do you have any questions? Do we see hydatid cyst very commonly in North? Yes, because a lot of Himalayan, sub-Himalayan areas. Anybody would like to share? Yes.
One is regarding management of lung hydatid.
Yes.
This is an ideal procedure. And the second question is regarding management of diffuse hydrolysis. Actually, we had seen a patient who had a liver hydatid, she was operated again, she presented with multiple intra-abdominal recurrences, but also lung hydatid not screening.
Management at the time of surgery. See, remember, we as a surgeon can cause more damage in the hydatid if you don't realize, and people don't realize on the table. If the spillage occurs patients do come back with widespread metastasis. What is the best treatment for anesthesia? I mean, lung hydrated. There was a previously that technique. I forgot the name of the technique, but we used to really ask anesthetists to really blow up Keel's procedure. But there was a technique. This was where it was really removed. But today with VATS coming up, usually the VATS has definitely helped us. Recently, about say in last 2 years, we did 2 patients who had one had a pancreatic isolated hydrated and a lung hydrated, and another boy who had a liver hydrated with a lung hydrated. So we did it not in one stage, but we did in 2 stages. It's lung hydrated with VATS, and doing VATS on surface is technically same as what we do for liver. It's not very difficult. You may not really do complete excision, but you again make an excise and spill the same principles you would like to really use. And I think that may be the best method today, especially for a lung hydrated. Chemotherapy followed by VATS works very well. Okay.
Sir, if a pair is done for a hydrated cyst, how do we document eradication? Because there's always a residual cavity which will be seen, especially for a type 1 cyst. There will always be a residual cavity. So how will we show it?
You have to do follow. Because ELISA is not of very much use in this situation. There is no parameter which can tell you the severity and grade. You only see collapse. You look for the reformation of the fluid, and sometimes people start growing size, then they require repair. As I told you, they require a repair 11.6%. And there their use parameter is increasing the size, or again full up of that, or the new cysts which are coming by the side. That is what you take as parameters. But there are no biochemical or immunological parameters which will tell you about frequency. Do you have any other thing in your mind?
No, sir, because the thing is that there could be after we do a pair procedure, there could be some reactionary fluid which fills up the cyst cavity. So how does the radiologist decide that whether subsequent sessions of pair are needed or the cyst has been completely
Minimum takes 3 months or 6 months to make a decision. It's not very quick decision like you do it immediately.
So
by that time the reactionary fluid will always get absorbed.
So if the cyst cavity has decreased in size?
As I said, I showed you those pictures. The cyst collapses means you are seeing a collapse and progress at the end of 1 month and 3 months. So if you want to take a decision of repair, usually it is done at 3 months, not earlier than that.
And one question to Dr. Vikas. Is there a role of laparoscopic radical surgery for hydrated cysts? If yes, then which are the cysts that should be managed laparoscopically? And when you do a pericystectomy, any specific preference for any specific instrumentation for parenchymal translation?
Personally, I have never done a laparoscopic pericystectomy, but yes, I encountered one case report was there where they have done a laparoscopic pericystectomy. So this should, I think, answer your first question. And second, are you doing laparoscopic pericystectomy? So that is why then you are a better person to answer this. And secondly, once you are doing pericystectomy with an open technique, there is no specific specific liver resection instrument which is needed. You can create a plane, you can deepen it with a simple artery forceps, Leahy's, Kelly classes, whatever you are comfortable with. If you have CUSA, it is better for you because you will be not damaging any vessels, but again you don't need any specific instrument to do a pericystectomy.
The trick is if you are doing pericystectomy for a biliary leak, identify the biliary leak and take proper sutures on the softer portion of the bite, not on the hard portion. That's the trick. And as I said, laparoscopically, I also don't have experience of doing laparoscopic hydatids. This is pericystectomies, but I think the way it is described is like to do a classical resection and put a clip on a bile duct. I don't know.
For pericystectomy, we commonly use a CUSA, and we have found that CUSA is especially helpful when dissecting along the pericyst. It's very helpful.
That is.
And as regards laparoscopic, not very many reports for radical procedures, but at our department we've done close to 15 radical procedures, which includes
pericystectomy or resections.
This includes both left lateral hemorrhectomies and cystopericystectomies. Initially, in the early part of experience, we were doing it for lesions which are in the anterior and inferior segments of the liver. Now we have started doing even for posterior.
I saw one video of Sanjay doing this. Sanjay Negi also has done using the same technique. But laparoscopic USI
We are using laparoscopy.
You have that.
Yeah.
They require expertise. But for the beginners in the hepatobiliary surgery, is it in view of the good albendazole, and is it really worth to go with radical surgery or conservative? Whether we can compare these two surgery?
As a beginner, I mean, if you are comfortable doing, if you are trained like that, if you have seen it being done, I think there is no reason where you cannot do it. But again, you have to have proper training. You have to have done a few pericystectomies under supervision. Then only you can do it yourself.
Yeah, I think
And-
we can reframe this Harjit's question. He wants to say that there is surgery. I think if I am wrong, you please correct me. If there is a headache cyst and somebody doing hepatobiliary surgery beginner and this is a procedure next day today patient can go home.
Yes.
And somebody doing pericystectomy in a fibroid area and taking lots of risk. So how much, maybe Harjit, you want to ask, how much is the difference in the recurrence that one should take so much as this, or as a beginner, is it not worth doing conservative surgery also?
No, I am not denying the conservative surgery has got its own place. But if in terms of recurrence, definitely the recurrence rate is significantly less with radical surgery. That is what I told you. If you are comfortable doing a radical surgery, please go ahead. Otherwise, I mean, you have to choose your patient. You have to select your patient properly.
It is always called as paradox of choice. I don't know whether you heard this Barry Schwartz talk on TED Talk. It's called the paradox of choice. Previously, we had only one choice of doing surgery and we are very happy with that. Now that we have many choices, we seem to be little confused about what to do when. And this is always a question which really occurs. What is the take-home message in this actually? Let's come down to the message. If there is definitely a small cyst, oddly placed cyst, which is not really growing much, medical therapy would do definitely better. If this patient goes to the medical physician or interventional radiologist, he will definitely try care. The way I look at it, if in a routine circumstances, if you get a cyst which is laparoscopically easily accessible and does not appear to have biliary communication or does not appear to be very big cyst, a simple putting a laparoscope, evacuating it and properly doing that without spillage, causing no harm to the patient, probably you will do a good job. We really don't know how much it will recur. Maybe you accept the recurrence rates about 10% or 15% at your set. But if you are able to do it well, that will be the best possible, and most of the people are doing that. Radical cystectomy logically is a good operation because it cures that particular disease, cures that particular cyst, leaves no any kind of a thing, but technically difficult and its own complication. So should be reserved for specialized centers. At the same time, those who are experts or where there is a really difficult case of thing where you would like to really do it. That would the message I would like to take, especially in a stratified way. So try to understand the disease not only from the point of what is its size, but also location, expertise, and then try to take a decision what you want to do. If you are doing a job laparoscopically and not causing spillage and taking that proper care, the recurrence rate would be acceptably low. I'm not saying it is acceptable. And that is the whole debate. If you really see the conservative versus radical last 15 years debate, radically, logically looks good, but people still continue to do conservative surgeries. And they still has its own place. So that debate is still not solved. There are the strong pericystectomy and excision, radical excisions versus the common surgical conservative surgeons, which we need to have a look at them. But as I feel, if you are becoming expert and you find a cyst which can be easily excised without much of complication, I would prefer that rather than trying to only empty it and put the yes.
Sir,
Yes.
regarding the management of diffuse hydatitis.
Diffuse.
Yeah, sir. Diffuse hydatitis. If the patient has intra-abdominal hydatitis,
As much as possible, empty them
we have to.
and give medical therapy for a long period of time.
Sir, is there any role of any margins when we are doing a cystectomy? Nothing like that, because most of the recurrences are
Not
secondary
much.
to ectovesiculation.
Not much. Not much.
So long is how much long? Like it's very important question. How much long can the
As I said, people give 3 courses of 28 days with gap of 20 days. That is ideal WHO recommendation. Sitaram, you want me to add anything?
will ask. Very good question. You asked. You asked if I do a simple operation as against doing complex varicocele. Is that right?
Yes.
I think that's a very good question. I don't think you should short sell yourself, saying that you're doing a simple operation, you're an inferior human being. I will probably come to you. Because there is a risk-benefit ratio in every patient. And I'd rather be a live problem than be a dead certainty in block 2 months. Don't short sell yourself.
The problem is people operate and create more problems for the patient by spilling. Many times patient come after 1 year with multiple hydrosis all over and this is all spilled, this is all hydrogenic. That's the problem. If you are able to avoid that, nothing like that. Yeah.
Actually, after purchase image of infected disease, do we need to give arboretum?
Usually, when you say there is an infected or a dead cyst, you don't need. But I mean, in clinical practice, people do give. There are no guidelines. Because say if you very classify as CE4 or CE5, ideally it's a dead cyst. But then this is by definition on imaging. There could be always something which so people usually give that albendazole. I don't know what is the role and what is the use. We really don't.
Sir, after surgery, you also recommend albendazole post-operatively for that 3 cycles? And
Yes.
pain also the same
Yes.
method?
Yes.
So my question is that to rule out biliary communication, and WHO paper said that they are routinely doing ERCP.
No, not necessarily. You don't do ERCP. See, if you are if you have patient who are suspected, I'll just see that presentation on somewhere last year I had taken. Very classically, how do you if you have pre-operative suspicion, that means if the patient has jaundice, cholangitis, and if you suspect that the cyst is anatomically placed very close to the center of the a segment or where there is a biliary anastomosis. If it is there at the portal pedicle, you suspect it. If you suspect patient has a cholangitis or has a biliary communication, you definitely do ERCP or MRCP to find out whether the patient has. In that case, you would definitely do ERCP and you would drain it. If you don't suspect it on table or if you find it on table, how would you know it? As soon as you open, you will see all the bile. Now, if you see bile, you try to put a scope and locate whether you can see the bile and you assess the wall how it is. If there is a very thin or undetectable, you can inject contrast. Many people have gone down and then removed gallbladder and did a cholangiogram, either put methylene blue or a contrast and try to see where it is leaking. If it's a soft surface, you take multiple sutures. But if you think it's a firm or it's a fistula which is not likely to heal that, then you try to excise it.
So in open it's okay, but if the pair, I am asking about the pair. Is there a role of ERCP?
If you
or contrast
inject
study?
and you get a bile, it's contraindicated. I think I said that the pair is contraindicated if you have a bile.
Is there a role of routinely doing contrast study?
If you are suspicious, you would do it. Definitely you would.
And sir, is there 20% or 25% saline, is that available in the market or?
Most of the pharmacies make it. It's available in the market in Mumbai. I don't know whether it is there. But as I said, we have stopped using it.
So now you are recommending povidone iodine.
Povidone iodine or cetrimide diluted.
Regarding drug therapy, if you have done a closed pericystectomy without spillage, you don't need to give drug therapy post-operatively.
Thank you.
Anybody else has any other questions? Anybody want to share other experiences before we close?
Any preoperative workup for before doing the radical surgery, preoperative work especially related to associated proximity with the vein, doctor.
Just you need a good contrast CT and you can locate the anatomy of the cyst and then you have to make a decision. You don't need any specific workup for hydrated to do it.
The only thing is I would say that be prepared for a resection. Though in a pericystectomy we use Uzar to dissect between the liver and the wall and many times it separates well. You should be prepared for a resection and therefore you should have a proper understanding of the anatomy and be prepared for a resection. That is the preoperative workup I would do. And as I said, rule out the biliary communication and if necessary do ERCP and stenting. Yes. Yes.
So
Sir, if patient, if there is a large cyst near the segment 7 and 8, and the patient is a young male and he has responded to albendazole and there is decrease in size over a few months and he is asymptomatic, whether we will go for surgery or we will wait and watch?
On the surface, close to the lung, I mean, it's a question of the way you take it. I mean, as I said, there are no definite guidelines. I would definitely aspirate it and, laparoscopically train it. But if it goes to a medical person and he says he would continue to follow it, I mean, these are issues where there are grey areas. There is no clear answer in our city. Many times these areas where somebody who goes to there, they decide what to do. We don't have, like say in a cancer, there are DMGs, no disease management group. For a benign disease, there are no DMGs. It's only GI department and GI surgery, or somebody will discuss and they decide. And there, the expertise goes as per the center. And that's the problem. In a borderline case like this, I would definitely, after giving chemotherapy, put a scope, because I think it's a little higher up, it can rupture, it can cause problems. But there are people who would wait and. Yes.
Sir,
Want to add that? Yes, answer that.
Sir, any experience with any Kashi cholangitis and is forbidden item absolutely safe in this area?
Nothing is safe. Initially, people used to use formalin, 10% formalin, and that was very strong. Then people started using 1% formalin. Less than that. That also causes, there was reported sclerosing cholangitis. Then people started using cetrimide. Okay, cetrimide is ultimately what cetyl-tetraethylammonium bromide. And that is also concentration which people started using. So you have to really balance between scolicidal concentration and the risk of causing cholangitis. So cetrimide also, there are reports with cetrimide causing sclerosing cholangitis. So now people use either hypochlorite solution or a betadine in a concentration which is low. So I think there is no ideal solution still yet found. But as I said, avoid spillage, aspirate first. Don't increase the pressure and then put it down to kill that. That would be the best policy. I have seen sometimes patient dying because people have not aspirated and injected forcibly and patient has gone into anaphylactic reaction on the table. So be aware of that. You wanted to say?
I was under the impression that no scolicidal agent is safe. Actually, we don't use scolicidal agents.
Nothing is safe.
Nothing is safe. If you get sclerosing cholangitis, secondary sclerosing cholangitis, a terrible disease to have. So your patient is in deep trouble and so on. I want to ask Avinash, is CT mandatory before you operate on hydraulic system?
Comfortable today, because sonography would not tell me 2 or 3 things if I'm doing laparoscopy. See, when you're doing laparoscopy, you have 2 or 3 your assessments are always weak. The higher segments, posterior segments, you are never able to assess them well. Close to the the hilar or the biliary and closeness, you are never able to do it. The standard X-ray and ultrasound, you can only say there is a single cyst, peripheral cyst. I would probably go ahead with that. But otherwise, I will definitely do a CT. Because somebody reports that it is a segment 6, 10 centimeter cyst on the surface, away from the hilum. If that is the way my sonography gives me picture. But I am not very confident of assessing and imaging in my mind with a sonography plate, only on the report. And many times I find it deficient. If possible, you can sit with a sonologist and see, yes, but then we don't take that away. CTs is something which we can read, we can really understand them, we can plan, we can develop a pathway in our mind, and therefore I thought CT is a good tool before we put a laparoscope. I don't know, you do it without this online report, sometimes you can get lost,
The reason why I'm asking is in my situation, there is a huge cost difference. Ultrasound costs 550 rupees, CT costs 6,600 rupees.
In KM it costs 1,200 rupees, and if I want I can make it free. But that's a typical government hospital, and I'm sure in PGI it is like that. And in most of the places you find it that way. So we don't. In many times we have 2 or 3 CT machines, and the patients many times coming to casualty get CT first by resident before it really goes to a consultant. So that's a totally different issue. Cost is an issue, but In a public hospital, doing a CT is many times as good as doing a sonography or private. I don't know what is people's opinion. This is an open forum. I think you can discuss what you do and we can read. Because see, many of these HPB you will find throughout these last 6 days, a lot of grey areas. They are not very clear-cut evidence-based answers you will get. So this is where we have to contribute and progress.
Sir, I have had a very humble experience of doing 6 cases laparoscopically. Very interesting thing which I came across, out of those 6 patients, 2 of my patients were very young. One was a 16-year-old female and another one 21-year-old female. So as the data shows that it's a disease between 29 to 50. So and another thing, luckily I have not encountered.
What was the type of No, I'm saying what were the organisms which caused at the age of 6? Maybe they were a little more aggressive organisms. Maybe we are seeing little different because normally the granulosis takes 10-15 years to really show sizable cyst. There's another aspect which that probably we are detecting them early, and this is probably the older versions where the
16.
60 you say?
16.
16 is okay.
And the first case was done 6 years back, and I've been following that patient. There is no recurrence in all the 6. I didn't encounter any complications intraoperatively because I took certain precautions to avoid the spillage. Only thing I encountered was urticaria in 2 of the patients. This urticaria didn't develop on first or post-operative day. The patient had urticaria on second post-operative day and it subsided by day 3. That was the only problem which I encountered.
No, if you take proper care, as I showed you, the incidence of anaphylaxis is very, very low. It's 2 in 5,000. But if you don't take that proper care of spillage, what are the risks you can cause while doing hydatid? First is anaphylaxis. Second is sclerosing cholangitis. Third is spillage, recurrence grossly, and then bleeding and hepatic damage and all that kind of thing. Now, if you say you take proper care of that, aspirating first, injecting if there is no bile, and then properly avoiding spillage by isolation, you can provide, at least do no harm. You may get recurrence if you do inadequately, but at least you can provide no harm. And follow-up of hydatid is very important because if you try to do, say at 2 months my patients are fine, that's not the real follow-up because you need to have 1 or 2 years before you realize whether your surgery is really effective or not effective. Otherwise, let's look at each other's patients many times. Your patient will come to me, my patient will go to you. That's what happens in our country. So we come to know how many patients.
So you have generally classes and risk of building is high. Should you proceed with the radical surgery or
Again, you have to really see, is it really abutting the vessels? If it is abutting the vessels, then I will not take up this patient for radical surgery. Then we will do conventional surgery and try to identify the biliary communication, and if there is biliary communication, if it is it's not fibrotic, we can suture it from inside, or else we can excise that part of the cyst near the biliary communication and suture in the liver, normal liver parenchyma.
We had this kind of experience when we opened the cyst, we evacuated everything, we found the biliary communication. But when we tried to suture it, it started bleeding. Probably it's a big portal vesicle there, and suturing from inside is not very good.
Yeah.
So we tried to multiple sutures and closed it, but post-op patient developed a biliary. So I was thinking, should we have excised that portion?
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Most of the time, when it's very fibrotic, one tends to take a deeper bite. That is where the problem will arise.
What you do in these cases like this, you excise wall whatever you can really do. Open up one lateral wall if you cannot really do that, and at least dissect one wall and try to go to that and try to clip it or ligate it from outside rather than trying to do inside. Anytime we try to do it inside, it bleeds more. As I said, therefore you have to be prepared for an hepatic resection. Yes, Amit?
So sometimes like such a situation, we could do something like a near nodal cystocystectomy cystectomy.
Yeah.
We go as close to the biliovascular pedicle structure as possible, and then when we reach there, we leave a part of the cyst wall there and then just fire a staple and stuff.
That is what is subtotal.
I think we have the time.